Hello and welcome to Metra AV Tech Tips. I'm Brent.
I'm Adam.
Welcome aboard. So Adam, talk to me about this week. What do we got going on?
All right, so the question that we're positing to the viewers today is hi-fi dead?
Well,
and I have an answer for that.
We're going to make this a very short episode then because...
it is.
No!
Well, no, it is because, all right, see y'all later. We'll reboot early, reboot often.
No, it's not.
Okay. All right, so first off, everybody, thank you for for coming and watching the video today. As always, it's super helpful. We are super thankful for that. Like, share, subscribe.
Wait. How thankful are we?
Super thankful.
Okay, just checking.
Super. Well, I mean, come on, we're super.
Wow.
We're super thankful, right? All right. So thank you for checking in today,
and subscribing.
And subscribing.
And if you haven't, please do.
We almost, I think we're like one subscriber away from 1560 subscribers, so we're almost there. So we really appreciate all the new subscribers that have joined the team. As always, if you have questions about what we're talking about today, you can leave it over in the chat section on the side, or you can leave it down in the comment section if you are watching this after the fact. So, with that out of the way,
don't forget to click the bell for notifications.
Yep, like, share, subscribe,
us on
bell notification.
Instagram,
Facebook.
Twitter, Facebook.
Yep.
Send money, send gift cards.
Mm-hmm. If you're over in Europe somewhere, send food.
Please,
or something like that.
Cheese,
Exactly
cheese.
right. Yep, cheese, sure.
Cheese and bread.
Okay, so, well, now that we have that out of the way.
And beer.
Well, if they're in Germany at least,
yeah.
or in the UK. I mean, I'm okay with UK beer. Yeah. All right. Anyways, moving on. So, the question is, let's go ahead and oh, perfect. Michael Heiss is saying, in a word,
hi, Mike.
Of course, it is not.
No,
Yeah.
I think we already covered that, and the show's over.
Yeah, pretty much. It's not. We'll see y'all later. We'll see you next time, and move on from there.
But
right?
why is it not dead?
Okay, so before we get into why it's not dead, let's educate a little bit, all right? Let's talk about where it came from a little bit and what it's done to the industry. And now, I'll be perfectly honest, today's episode is more of a talking head episode. We're just going to be
conversational.
Yeah, it's conversational. So
because let's face it, he's a child and has no clue what hi-fi is.
Yeah, no. Now I will say I did some research on a certain individual, Avery Fisher.
Yes.
And I have to say, if you have an opportunity to go back and read Avery Fisher's Wikipedia page, it's well worth it, because what it really comes down to is these guys that were champions of the hi-fi world and now is champion of our audio world today. They were really just like us. They were custom integrators. They were designing some. They were hobbyists. They were custom integrators. They were people that wanted to see if they could maximize the potential of the device that they were using. And so a lot of them created their own. Avery Fisher was one of them with the Fisher Electronics.
Well, it wasn't. When in our world, the brands that we think of now, the JBLs, the Shure Vegas, the Boston Acoustics, Koss, these were all names that started from guys literally either in their basement or straight out of MIT,
right,
wanting to do something better. Mm-hmm. Now, hi-fi does not necessarily mean stereo.
Yes, correct. Well, because the early ones were not. It was mono. And that was one of the things that, because you had just, I mean, honestly, if we go, depending on how far back we go, you have the phonograph. I mean, you have the...
Which was not hi-fi, but it was music.
Exactly. And it was probably one of the, wasn't the first, because they had there was the
wax cylinder.
The wax cylinder, and then after that, then you had the disc or the
phonograph, which was
phonograph
lacquer.
record, which was lacquer. So that was kind of an interesting time before you get into like the electronics.
It wasn't really until the 50s that hi-fi became a thing.
So let's put this out there. We got a few on there. Okay. Michael Heiss. So Michael Heiss is saying the question to ask and answer first is, what is high-end audio? That is the key to effectively selling two-channel products. I agree. And then he's saying Fisher, Saul Morant, Sidney Harmon, and a few others were the core of the 1950s hi-fi world. Yeah.
And Klipsch.
Yeah, Klipsch. Yeah. So
and here's the thing, they all knew each other.
Yeah.
This was a fairly small group of people. It's like the early days of PCs. Mm-hmm. Hi-fi was that. These guys all knew each other. You had H.A. Scott, Avery Fisher, Saul Morant, Klipsch, the Harmon, and now I'm vapor locking.
Yeah. Yeah.
But most of these guys knew each other, and the idea was to become Henry Kloss, just a little better than the other guys. KLH.
Yeah.
All these products started off as, what is music? How do we recreate the live performance sound?
Well, and a lot of
Not
and
just-
that was the thing, right? You would have like live music, and that was a more common thing than even nowadays.
Oh, way more common.
And the thing is that the live music then was totally analog. There was no electrical.
Oh, no.
Well, probably they had amplification, but it
Right.
wasn't. For the most part, you would go to and watch this, but there wouldn't be any effects. There wouldn't be anything else. It was just analog. It was just the audio.
If you listen to a band on radio, quite often it was a live performance.
Yeah.
Now they may have also recorded it, but it generally was a live performance on radio. If it was NBC, CBS, or the major affiliates.
Yeah.
So it was just, how do we recreate that? And in the early days, it was just a speaker.
Yeah.
And the original speakers, folded horns, ported drivers. It really wasn't until the early advent development by Henry Kloss that we went to sealed enclosures. And then it wasn't until the soft dome tweeter was developed that we actually got into wide upper frequency range.
Yeah.
Because prior to that, it was horns.
Right. So with the and Michael saying, actually, no, they didn't. Sydney never met Dr. Bose.
Okay, I never.
Well, one.
First off, at no point did I say Amar Bose in that list of people. Because that ain't hi-fi.
Well, I mean, when
No, it's
not
stereo.
not even at the beginning.
No, the 901 was not hi-fi.
For Bose, for
Yes.
the original Bose speaker
It was sold in
systems.
hi-fi stores.
Now hold on, because are we talking like hi-fi? When in this. Okay, let's back up because we need to define hi-fi a little bit more because the history's good to talk about. Well, but before we get into too much of the history, let's talk about what is hi-fi.
An honest reproduction of live music.
There. So
That to me is high fidelity. An
Sure.
honest reproduction of live music.
hey Leo, good to see you in the chat.
And you know what, Michael? What's your take on that?
And that's the right question because I think honestly, hi-fi is probably one of the most debated things in our industry or in the AV world. I think there's so much as to question what is hi-fi because you have so many people like myself who have never truly experienced hi-fi or
No, and to
good hi-fi.
you, a decent stereo is hi-fi.
Yeah. Well, and let's be perfectly honest. Going from what I was listening to before to listening to a Bose system, and I'll say that was higher fi than what I was listening to before. And so for me, that probably would have been like a hi-fi thing. Now I have experienced a better system than that because it doesn't take that much to do that. But all that to say, we're not here to bash on anyone else specifically. So moving on from that, yeah. Okay, so let's put that question out there then. So what is your definition of hi-fi? Is your definition of hi-fi an accurate recreation,
Honest.
an honest, or
An honest
is there a
reproduction of
difference?
live music.
Is there a
Yes.
difference between accurate and honest?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Because you can be very accurate with digital, but to
Okay.
have the life and the sibilance of the live music.
Okay. All right.
It's an honest reproduction.
I'll follow along with that. Yeah.
Accuracy can be dry.
So and I guess my next question is since we are talking about hi-fi products, I want to see your favorite hi-fi product, your favorite piece of equipment that was hi-fi grade, or what you would see as a hi-fi product. We had a lot of discussion when we were talking about sources and interconnects and everything else, reel-to-reels and everything else. And quite a few really interesting devices came in. I went online.
I was watching you do the research.
I went online and did the research on them, and there were some really awesome-looking products. We had some cassette decks. We had some, reel-to-reel systems. Some record players, but not record players. But turntables. And it was really interesting to go back and look at that and see where we came from. There's actually a really cool YouTube channel. I forget his name. It's Technology Connections is the name of the channel. When you get off of here, go over and check them out. He's actually it's a one-man show. He just kind of does and talks about just technology in general. But his whole philosophy is going back and seeing why something works a certain way based on the history of something. And so for me, it was interesting to go back and look at the history of hi-fi, look at Avery Fisher. I didn't go much further, unfortunately, I ran out of time.
He actually does much work here.
But the thing
Some
is
of it
that,
frustrating. Ask me about today.
oh gosh, we won't get into that today. We'll have a good show today. No, but honestly, when looking at that and seeing, well, for me, like I said earlier, was the simple fact that the funny thing is to say that they were just like us, or they're just like us. Honestly, they were just like us. We're just trying to come out, especially us here at Metra, we're just trying to come out with good products. Look at our HDMI products, right? HDMI was a thing, and we started to get into it, and at the very early days, we released product that was pretty much like everybody else's. And then we realized that...
That didn't take long for us to realize that.
Exactly. Well, but we did realize it. We realized that we could do better, and we did do better, and we strive for that even more every day that we come up with new stuff. And for them, the guys creating the hi-fi products back in the day, it was a lot of the same thing. It was... I want to reproduce, I just listened to this concert, and I want to reproduce that sound that I experienced in that concert hall as accurately or as honestly as I possibly can in my environment that I'm here in my house. Now, back then, of course, in the super early days, there wasn't known factors of, you have the reflection of the audio off the walls, which is going to change the timing and throw off the audio there, or using that to fill out the space a little bit more, bipoles, dipoles, and all that kind of stuff to get the different, staging and everything else. Like you were talking about, to get the actual soft tweeters so that you could actually go up into the higher frequencies. You have much larger and more capable, more capable subwoofers now, and so all the way down, so now we have such a broad range of audio that we can reproduce, whereas before you had, you're talking through like something like this, and you had a microphone like that, and you couldn't pick up.
And you were happy to hear music.
Yeah, you could hear the rhythm, which is kind of where we're going back to.
Right. Well, for people my age,
sure,
it was a transistor radio.
Yeah.
You had your transistor radio with your little 1.5-inch speaker in it, and your pull-out antenna that was that long.
Right.
Because it was metal.
Right.
And it was music, and it was AM.
Yeah. Oh, and you heard it. And it
was awesome. And then when you hear your first stereo, and for most people, the first stereo typically was a what we call the compact system.
Yeah.
Which, you had an AM/FM tuner and a turntable and a lid and a couple of speakers that plugged in the back, typically with RCA terminals. That was a compact system.
Yes.
And you have stereo. It's like, ooh, this is great.
Yeah.
And then somewhere down the line, you wandered into a store in the mall back then, because the stores were in the malls.
Yep.
You wandered into the local hi-fi store, and you sat in front of something. You were too young to be there, and they did everything to kick you out, but you still managed to get in.
Yeah.
And you hear something, and you hear not just this, but this, and this, and that.
Yeah.
And suddenly it's like, oh.
You reminded me. Let me go get it. Keep going.
Oh.
Keep going. Oh.
Wow, thanks.
Yeah.
Well, what do we got some good stuff here, by the way.
So
well, yeah, we'll get to Dolby, but that's a whole lot further down the line there, Michael. Yeah, Michael, about the public and Bose.
Okay. Yeah, the public and Bose. Yeah,
but that's great marketing.
Yeah. And then you've got, let's see, but not recorded audio is live. It is not just about reproducing live audio. I missed that one. Let's see. Okay, and then, and don't forget the contribution of Ray Dolby for better sound playback.
Yes, but that was for tape, and we'll get to that one.
Well, and because Dolby was not so much he had the technology that saved it to the tape in a better fashion, so it could be reproduced better with
lower noise floor.
Yeah, exactly.
DBX also did at the time. We had DBX noise expansion and reduction.
Yeah. And let's see. Mike is saying, Adam, that was due to the limited bandwidth of radio transmission from live 1930s and 40s from event to studio, but just in the home equipment, it's a full ecosystem chain, not just one device. 100% I agree with that, because when you look at the old days of, you talk about the single device that had the radio and the metal antenna and everything else, you're listening to AM. Well, we talked about the idea before about how you can have your chain or pathway of your signal, and you can go amazing, 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 crap, amazing. Well, guess what? you're going to get crap at the
As
end.
soon as you stick crap in
because as soon as you hit that. But if you go amazing all the way through, then you have amazing
well,
at the very end.
You know, it's one of the things that when you look at our industry.
Yeah.
In the early days, they focused on speakers.
Mm-hmm.
Speakers were the biggest improvement per dollar spent.
Right.
And it started off with better cabinet designs. You know, they started off with real wood cabinets, which are beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
But it turns out that wood is not a consistent product, and it affects the sound internally.
Yeah.
So then they started going to pressboard. The problem with pressboard is it doesn't look as sexy.
No.
So then they had to do veneers.
Yep.
And then you had vinyls, and you know, to cut costs. And so, but a lot of time and money was spent in improving the speaker technology, because regardless of what you've done here,
Yep.
speakers are like the tires on your car.
Yeah.
You can have the best motor in the world, but if you got crap tires,
Yep.
it's not being transferred to the road.
Right. You're just spinning.
Where you can take a small motor, put great tires, and the car just does better.
Yep.
So they started with speakers. And as that got better, then they got the amplifiers better. Now, we're not going to argue tube transistor today,
Yeah.
because I have an opinion.
Yeah. What is your
Tubes.
better?
Oh, hell yes.
And I agree with that.
Now, here's the thing.
Yeah.
Do they look as good on a scope?
No.
No.
But the thing is
And
that,
that's the difference between an honest reproduction and an accurate
well,
reproduction.
yeah, because think about it. Because if you were to somehow scope my voice on a scope would look like crap compared to something that's digitally recreated.
And one of the things we've certainly noticed in our trying to make you and I sound equally good,
Yeah, that's the other thing. Yeah.
which we can't.
Yeah.
You have a much better voice for this than I do.
Well, yeah.
Obviously, I have a better face, but you have a better voice.
Well, yeah. I mean, because look, I'm made for radio. You're made for
Not a darn thing.
Moving on. We got more. What do we got? Music tracks are live. Movie soundtracks are not live. They are created audio. Yes. Yeah. Well, because if you look at even most of today's music tracks, like, you go to a music studio or a recording studio, and the thing is that it's not live, because in most cases
No, they've tracked it and tracked it and tracked it and
over and
tracked it
over
and
and
tracked
over and
it.
over again.
In the late 70s, the move to multi-track, multi-channel recording had already taken over. You know, the Beatles, by the time they got to the Sgt. Pepper album, spent months and months and months and months on an album versus their first one where they went in and cut the whole album in 3 days.
Well, because they all sat together and played the music together
Right.
versus the multi-track.
Right.
Yeah.
So in the late 70s, one of the New York recording studios got a band together, and they created an album called Direct to Disco. Now, we're not going to argue about the content.
Sure.
It was a white vinyl record.
Is there an argument there?
No, there really isn't. We're not going to argue. But the idea of this is you had a live band in the studio. That the entire side of the album was cut direct to the first vinyl master.
Oh, so there was no
tape.
No. Oh, okay.
It went direct to vinyl.
Ah.
So you got the whole band, everybody's there. So if there's a mistake, guess what?
It's there.
Back to one, new platter.
Okay, that's really interesting. So there is a, it's not necessarily safe for the working environment, but there is a gentleman. Do you know who I'm talking about? There is a guy who all he does is when he makes music, he does like live music and stuff. He makes it on the first take. He doesn't plan anything out. He starts a rhythm.
The NPC.
Yeah, he's got a. Do you know who I'm talking about?
He's actually from Rhode Island.
From Rhode Island. I forget it. Isn't it like Mike or I forget his name. Anyways, my point is that there's a naturalness,
spontaneity.
Yes, exactly.
That gets lost in multiple tracking in the studios.
Yes, yeah,
and there's a liveness to it, a realness that doesn't exist.
Right.
You know, when you listen to the Eagles.
Yep.
By the time they got to the Hotel California album, they were, while still very good live, it was a studio album.
Right.
And there is a loss of who they were, and which is not to devalue the album. It's an incredible album.
Yeah.
But same thing with the Beatles. That first album just full of energy. Yes, the creativity improved over time. The songwriting got better. The instruments got better. Their ability to perform got better.
Right.
But what you lost
was that
what began
Yeah.
Beatlemania.
Well, and that's kind of what when you talk about we're getting off on I don't know how we did this, but we're getting off track of the hi-fi
hi-fi.
stuff. But when we talk about that, the whole aspect of there's a band that I listened to 10 years ago, or even 15 years ago, but they when they recorded the initial recording was like that, where they were all sitting in one recording studio. Everything was mic'd up by itself, of course, so that you could track it. However, when they played it,
They played together.
they played together, and that was it. And now they would do a couple takes and everything else, and that makes sense because they want to get it right. But they played it like it was a live event, and you get more connection to it. It's like jazz music. 'Cause
and that's when the reason jazz was such a popular music format for
Mark Rebellet. Mark Reb.
I was thinking of somebody else, but the guy that does that.
Oh, okay, yeah, that guy too. Yeah, I've seen his stuff. But Mark, Leo, that's exactly who I was talking about. Mark, not exactly the most safe for work lyrics because he just kind of goes off and swears and calls people pigs and.
He is a music genius.
But he is a music genius.
Yeah.
The dude's really cool.
when you
Anyways.
look at sampling content. You know, when you go to a store and they do the demos.
Right.
Jazz was the most frequently used music, not just because of the fidelity content, but because of the energy
Yeah.
content.
Yeah.
And in a retail environment, the whole idea is to get the customer happy and
Yep.
jazzed up to
Yep.
buy money and spend money. And a lot of the heavily studio content didn't.
Yeah. Yeah. It was accurate,
But it wasn't honest.
but it wasn't honest. And that's
Yes.
and honestly that
Are
that
you
really
beginning
is.
to understand my...
Yeah, because and the differentiation between that conversation is like mounting a TV to a wall. There's pretty level and then there's true level. If you put a TV on the wall and it's true level, guess what? If it's not, if the house isn't,
It doesn't look right.
it doesn't look right. So it's
Been there, done that.
pretty level. A pretty level, everything looks level. If it's true level, it may not be the best looking setup. So sometimes you have to do that. You have to, actually
Pretty level.
use the pretty level stuff
Virtually
instead.
level.
Leo, that's right. He is always in a bathrobe. For some reason, that's his get up. He gets in a bathrobe. Let's see. Michael Heiss is saying MDF or veneers have little to do with the speaker sound versus real wood enclosure. There is much more to that for speaker design. Cabinet material is as much of an appearance thing than anything else.
I did not know that.
So, well,
See, I was...
well, and
We were always taught that
Yeah.
the consistent composite material, MDF,
right.
provided a more stable environment. And
Yeah.
I'm a big believer in thicker is better.
Yeah.
Less cabinet resonance, better control of cabinet resonance means more audio's leaving through the drivers and less through the cabinet walls.
Well, and with that, honestly, both of those make sense to me because if you have, let's say you have a wood that was grown in multiple wet seasons, that's going to grow differently and have different thickness and density.
When you look
to
at the
it.
big klipschs, the klipschs were basically plywood.
Right.
And, I mean, they were just big sheets of plywood. No MDF, no, they eventually did walnut veneers and stuff, but they started off as just big,
Right.
giant sheets of plywood when you did a corner horn.
Now, I will say that there's a huge difference between having a plastic enclosure
Yes.
versus a wooden enclosure. There is a huge difference between that because it just doesn't resonate the same way. Okay, so let's get ourselves back on
So
track
have
a
we
little bit.
determined what hi-fi is?
I think the consensus is still out, and I think it will always be out because I feel like audio is subjective to the umpteenth degree.
And, okay, so here's the different question for you. When you listen to a tube or you listen to a solid state or you listen to the new chip-based units,
Right.
they all sound differently. Now, CD versus album.
Yep.
The great argument,
Yep.
which is still going on. A CD will give you a more accurate copy because of bandwidth capabilities, frequency response, and low noise floor than the vinyl can. But which is a more honest sound to you?
Well, and
Ooh,
put
what
it
do
out
you
to
guys
the-
prefer?
Yeah.
To you, which would you rather listen to? Now, we're not talking, a cheesy $11 stylus here. We're talking a proper system
Right.
with a good belt drive turntable, not direct drive.
Yep.
Because we don't want that wow and flutter up to the platter.
You don't like that? Woo, 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 woo?
I don't like direct drive.
Okay.
So good belt drive turntable, proper tone arm, And a good cartridge, not a Shibata because you can cut your own albums with that one, and you can. Really nice cartridge, good phono preamp. Would you rather listen to that, even though it's limited bandwidth compared to the CD?
Right.
Or some of the newer digital formats like high-res, Sony's high-res, or
Yep.
would you rather listen to CD or other digital formats?
So, Leo, let's be honest, you're hanging TVs crooked for a different reason. You come here for the show, you stick around because we roast you. I don't know. Anyways, moving on. I think that when it comes to those differences between that, and I think that's where I'll relate this into today's world when we're dealing with audio and what the majority of people are listening to. When you have, I can appreciate the uses of both. If I was in a listening moment or in a listening mood to where I am taking time out of my day to sit down and listen to something, take out the record, put it on the player, put the stylus in place, get everything tuned in correctly, tell the kids to be quiet, sit down in the one chair that I'm going to sit in. Yeah, just go outside and play. And sit down in that one chair, and I'm going to be sitting here for the next hour listening to this music. Then yeah, I'm going to do a record.
Album,
sure, yeah. But I think it also depends on what I'm listening to. Because if I'm listening to something that is of a live aspect, an album. But if I'm listening to something that's recorded in a studio with a tracked setup, then I would be more inclined to listen to a CD recording of it because their initial purpose or their initial reason behind recording it is for accuracy in that aspect. That's why they were doing tracked bass instead. So they can go in and they can tweak. Okay, is the hi-hat too high? Do we need to give it a little bit more of a mellow sound to it? Do we need to crisp things up a little bit?
Yes, sir. We have a question from the audience.
So, with today's music industry, everything is all obviously digital.
Well,
and online.
not always.
Most everything
Not
is.
always. There's a lot of artists that are now requiring albums be produced, and there's some guys that are working with the analog preamp sections.
If they're working with the analog, yeah. So
there are.
Yeah.
But the majority, if I'm listening to music, I'm opening up
the fast turn stuff.
Major
Yes.
platforms to listen to music. And whether I'm working out or I'm in my car, I'm blasting it, and whatever they're giving me is what I get. I assume, right? Is that
Yes.
Yep. Yeah. Well, and that is the
Okay, now this kind of takes us
discussion
into
for
the
it.
future, which I think is next week's episode. But
It is, yeah.
You've got companies like Tidal and Deezer
yeah.
that provide high-res digital options.
Yeah.
So, in my opinion, those are hi-fi, by the way.
I agree. I agree.
Pandora,
Yep.
your basic Spotify.
You go listen to normal Amazon,
That's
normal
not
Spotify.
hi-fi.
Yeah.
That's stereo.
The MP3s or even some of the FLACs are not.
They're stereo.
Yeah.
Okay, you got a right speaker and a left speaker and a little bit of something between them. It's not hi-fi.
Michael is saying, once again, what is good is in the ear of the listener. People may like one system or technology because it delivers what they're used to or like. You guys are missing the point on that. No, we are seeing the point on that because I like where you went with that because people may like one system or technology because it delivers what they are used to. That's like, look, you grow up on Kraft mac and cheese, the blue box, versus growing up with somebody who's, going in and making it from scratch. The thing is that in a lot of cases like that, you prefer the Kraft mac and cheese.
Just for what it's worth, I've tried some of the expensive ones.
Sure.
And I still prefer the Kraft mac and cheese.
And that's just it. It's that same mindset for that. And I would agree with you on Michael on that aspect to where, yeah, if I'm used to listening to music in a certain way and I go listen to it somewhere else, then or through a different medium or say something like that, then it may not sound right, and what I'm looking for is something else. And I think that's really where the point that you're trying to make with it is that it's very it's subjective. It's super
well,
subjective.
Certainly, your equipment selection. One of the things with hi-fi stores back in the day, and since there's very few of them left anymore, but back in the days, you would go in and you would audition. And we're not talking just auditioning a speaker. You may audition a preamp, you may audition a cartridge, a tone arm, cables. All this stuff was mix and match. You'd walk in and most stores had set up 3 or 4 systems in them.
Right.
And these systems were based on personal preferences, profit margin, spiffs.
Right.
It didn't matter what was in the back
Sure. Yeah. Yeah,
for
exactly.
inventory.
Yeah.
But the idea is you go in, and I remember on a Saturday I worked at Absolute Sound in Winter Park, Charles O'Meara. Great store, newest stuff. We had this guy come in. You could tell he was an engineer from Martin Marietta.
Okay.
Seriously, the tweed jacket, the patches on the elbows, the pipe, the beard, the mustache, and about that tall.
Got it.
And he had with him his stereophile test record.
One that, okay. Yeah.
And it had test tones on one side and music on the other.
Yeah.
So this guy goes over. We had, we had 5 systems set up on the wall, I think, and it started with a dual turntable, a NAD 7220 PE, and a pair of A60 Series 2 Bostons.
Yeah.
And so he puts this album, because we had buy one get one
Yeah.
on the Bostons.
Yeah.
So he puts the album on, and you could smoke in a store back then.
Sure. Got his
Lowers
pipe.
it down, and he steps back, and the entire side of the album, all the test tones. It gets done, takes his album off, very carefully slides it back in the sleeve and into the cover, walks up to the front counter. I think there's about a 2 dB drop at 2,500 cycles. Not acceptable. we had a salesman who only worked on Saturday, who was a vice principal at one of the local middle schools.
Yeah.
He looked, get the out of my store.
So, Nick Danger is saying,
Hi, Nick.
How does one continue the tradition of high fidelity audio in an age of remixing older masters into Atmos versions, something they were never intended to be? Okay, I have an answer for this. If it's a remaster into it, to where they're taking the original recording and putting it through the Atmos setup, I don't like it. I don't agree with it. I understand people do like it. There are people out there that like it. This is getting into there's another great YouTube video, and I forget again who that was for, but he was talking about people that would take 24 frames per second videos and using the interpolation.
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 The 4-3 pull down.
Well, what they would do is they would turn that 24 frames per second into 60 frames per second, which kind of works with like actual camera recording and stuff, but for animation it doesn't work very well. It actually does some really weird things. But it goes into that. If you take something that was initially recorded as a 2-channel or even a mono setup, and I'm almost at the same level with mono going into stereo setup, if someone is mixing it themselves to go into stereo, I'm kind of in the same avenue with that, to where it doesn't do it right. However, and this is where the digital side of things, where we have the much higher capabilities, abilities to record things.
I hear an if.
Using that to where you are re-recording a live playing of that with like an Atmos setup. So there was an Atmos test disc that they released, or it was actually a Dolby surround sound disc. But they went into a live concert for, I think it was Lady Gaga. Yeah, it was Lady Gaga. It's on that
disc.
Yeah,
the
it's
DVD.
on that disc. I'm trying to remember which one it's in over here. But
that's okay. It was the Dolby Digital demo disc.
Yep, the Sound of HD 3. The great disc, by the way. But
and by the way, it's because of that I would go see her.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is that and
I never thought I would say that, because I'm an old man and the new artist kind of.
Sure.
But she performed. She was out there performing.
Yeah. Well, and so my point is that if it's someone doing the performance and actually performing it, and it's being recorded with an Atmos-based recording system, to where you have multiple microphones set up and it's recording in a spatial setup correctly, I would be okay with that. In fact, I am okay with that. But when it comes down to somebody taking something that was originally recorded one way and then reproducing it, that I'm not okay with, because it always goes against the initial reasoning behind it.
And there's been a lot of when they've gone back and cleaned up recordings and remastered. And if you're just taking background noise out, I don't really have an issue with that.
Yeah.
But it was not uncommon in the early to mid 60s where you would do a mono and stereo track simultaneously. Or they would cut the mono track and then go back and make a stereo track. So the band could be playing slightly different on one from the other.
Right.
The Beatles albums were available as mono and stereo. They were not always the same track.
Yeah. There may be slight variations in them playing it back.
Right.
Yeah. Nick Danger is saying his definition of hi-fi is always reproducing something in the exact reflection of what the artist intended. And that's where we get the differences between it. We get the differences between...
I think I said honest.
You said honest, he says exact. And the thing is that's where we have the subjectiveness of this, because for him, hi-fi is reproducing it at their intention. Versus recreating an honest reproduction
that's the same
of what it
thing
was.
with video.
Yeah.
When I am not a fan of colorizing.
Mm-hmm.
If it was done in black and white, leave it alone.
So like those were the videos that they take for, like, here we're going through Los Angeles and it's like back from like the 1890s or 1900s or whatever, and then they recolor it and then play
Ted
it back
Turner
that
did a
way.
lot of that.
Yeah. Let's see. Leo saying Velveeta shells and cheese all day. Michael saying violins and speakers are two different things. Of course, you wouldn't build a violin or bass out of MDF, but speakers design is a different animal. Yeah, and then let's see. That's where I'm getting to that. My material matters. It's not up to the skill of the mixer. It can be done, but it is what people want. Is a good question. I've sat through some of those, and it is interesting. So we're getting into debate territory.
Well, hi-fi is debate.
It is debate,
and that's the thing.
Yeah.
If you worked in a hi-fi store,
yeah,
and I assume it's the same now. It's been years since I've been in one because they
Sure.
don't exist. But when you work in a hi-fi store, you'll have 3 or 4 guys sitting around just like you and I are right now,
yeah.
arguing the merits of this, and this.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, no, I like the Luxman better. Yeah, but the NAD for the value of the dollar. And these are...
Well, yeah.
And what is hi-fi?
Yeah.
It's perception.
Yeah, honestly it is. And you actually hit a really good point. The value of it, right? That's where you get the next part, because you can walk in and listen to these $250,000, per speaker, and then $500,000 for an amplifier, and then, whatever else, just astronomical. You wind up $1 million.
It better be good.
Oh yeah, you sit there and yeah, it sounds absolutely phenomenal. Are you spending that money?
No.
No, and that's where a lot of the rest part of it comes from.
With your paycheck,
Of course, yeah.
you could.
Well, I do make the big bucks around here.
Yes,
I
yes,
make
you
at
do.
least $2 million per episode, so...
I got to renegotiate.
Anyways, let's see. They have the tracks. They record everything. Therefore, they are going back and taking the tracks of audio that they have. Okay, Leo, you're talking about... Okay, so where they have the original tracks and then they're remixing it into Atmos. Again, they don't have the full 3D environment that they've created from that. So, because that's what Atmos is. It's a 3D environment in an audio spatial setup. And so it's a little bit different than going in and just recording it with the microphones natively as an Atmos setup, versus doing something where you're going with, you have surround sound recordings or you have tracked recordings and you can do that. I'm just not a big fan of it myself.
Well, it was not uncommon when you looked at early, even into the 70s, band recordings, the keyboard, the guitars, the bass were all jacked directly into the board.
Mm-hmm.
The drum was 1 to 3 mics. That was it. You generally didn't even have a bass drum mic.
Mm-hmm.
It was just, a couple of arm-mounted mics picking up the whole
space, yeah.
Right. And everything else was direct jack. So there was any reverb came from either feedback through the mics, and it was generally in headphones, so there wasn't, or added.
Mm-hmm.
So spatialness, studio spatialness, was not real by the late 60s, early 70s.
Well, and that's why they had to re-add it back into the
because it was all direct jack. So,
Right.
and it makes it simpler. It cuts down on the problems with
Sure.
the microphones.
Yep.
It cuts down on the noise hums, all the issues that you have.
Yep.
But it takes away when you look at. We're going to go back to the first Beatle albums.
Sure.
When they went in and they played,
they had their amplifier. They had a mic on it. They had their bass. They had a mic on that.
And
just played.
There's a certain honesty to that that gets lost in later albums.
Yep. Nick Danger is saying the problem is the labels see this as a revenue stream to reactivate older IP. You are 100% correct.
How many ways have you bought the same album?
Yeah.
I've got Silk Degrees by Boz Scaggs. I've had it on vinyl, 8-track, cassette, CD.
Did you get the DVD audio discs?
No, I didn't get those, but I did get...
Did you get the Super CD?
I got the George Benson Breezing on SACD, which I also had on CD, and on 8-track, and on cassette, and on vinyl. So, yes. Yeah, I wonder, this is Bella Fleck.
Yeah.
Bluegrass Sessions, which was also on CD. But a lot of the artists are once again demanding vinyl.
So when we hold on, Nick Danger, to finish off what he was saying, they are not getting the artists to participate, but they are pounding out product en masse. You are correct. That's where we run into the problems where if an artist sells off the rights to their own music, you run into that problem where the recording or the label can then go back and reproduce it and re-release it because they own it at that point.
How long was it until we saw the Beatles on any kind of streaming environment?
Well, it wasn't until after Michael Jackson, right? Because he owned the Beatles, at the rights to the Beatles.
And he held on to it.
Exactly. And then Nick Danger also says, don't forget the $1,600 power cables.
Yeah.
Listen, you can hear a difference if okay, all right, hold on. You can hear a difference if you go from a 20 gauge or 18 gauge power supply or power cable up to what you should be using, which would be like a 14 gauge power cable plugged into it that way. You can hear a difference there because
there's a lot of other things in that stream that have to play for that to happen.
Correct. Yeah, but saying that at that point, you at that level, I believe that yes, you could hear a difference because you're starving the system.
You are definitely starving the system, but can the system draw more than what it is?
True. Correct. Yeah, correct.
I was at the New York High-End show. 15 years ago. We had a room set up there.
Yep.
When we first introduced it's 20 years ago, the original ethereal cables. I was here with Richard Schramm from Parasound. He brought in all of his Halo gear. And we had Fred Yando from Bollinger Grabner, the ribbon speakers.
Okay.
So
don't know who that is, but okay.
You're a kid. You're a kid. So room setup is beautifully. Now it's interesting because Richard Schramm and Fred Yando both are very recognized people in the industry and both with very strong opinions.
Sure.
And as soon as one of them would leave the room, the other one would go up and change all the settings on the preamp. Now this went on for 3 days. Now we have two very well-known men, both with phenomenal reputations in the high-end industry.
Sure.
Fred used to own KEF, ran Meridian, ran Nakamichi, so his credentials are impeccable.
Yeah.
Richard Schramm, Parasound.
Yeah.
But tremendous arguments. The second day, I went in early and had my laptop. And Fred had been playing Norah Jones all day long the first day. Like, I got to hear something else. So I had made a quick disc up in the room off of MP3s.
Okay.
Just to hear something else.
Yep.
You know, little Michael Jackson, little George Benson, maybe some AC/DC.
Now you said MP3s.
Yes, I did.
Okay.
This is,
okay,
we're talking 96 to 128K stuff.
Yeah, okay.
Not high-end audio.
Sure.
So I'm in there early, cleaning the room, getting everything organized. I got the disc playing, and people come in and they sit down. And I was using a Pioneer 464 or something like that DVD player. Not Blu-ray, this is all predates all that.
Yep.
And, they're coming in, and I'm just enjoying the music, and I turn around, the room's full of people. I go, okay, I'll get started. Morning, my name's Brent, and, going to what you're listening to, these are the BG 520Is, this is the Parasound C1, the A51, a little bit of background and everything. And what you're listening to here is the Pioneer DVD, whatever it was, that I bought, open box at Best Buy. Happily said that.
Yep.
And the music content is a disc I made this morning off of Music Match, which you could download songs into.
Sure.
I had half the room get up, disgusted, and walk out because they felt I had somehow lied to them at a high-end show. Now, the fact of the matter is they were sitting there enjoying what they listened to because the system made the best of what it could.
Yeah.
It took okay content
made it sound
good. So they were all enjoying what they were listening to till I inadvertently rubbed in the faces that they weren't listening to some high-end something, glory, golden-eared stuff.
Yeah.
And Fred Yando was in the back laughing his butt off because he had already run some comparisons between, some of these golden ears and found them to be complete idiots.
Yeah.
And Richard was just shaking his head, but...
Well, he knew at that point what was going on.
But, I mean, it's just... Yes, it is very much a personal...
So, when we look at... And let's look at how we're going to see this same environment today with HDMI. So... Well, because here's where I'm going with it. Because we're running into the new FRL and the link training and everything else and the EQs
And you know what?
all that kind of stuff.
I was not thinking about
You
that,
weren't
but you're
prepared for that.
absolutely right.
So when we have the
Because you know what? FRL is hi-fi.
yeah, well,
It is hi-fi.
100%. So here's what we're learning about we're HDMI people, so it's fun to wrap things
I
back.
work in an HDMI world.
Yeah.
I'm a two-channel analog guy.
Okay, there you go. So when we have the new FRL standard for HDMI, we're running into things with, the new HDMI 2.1 standard. We're running into things called FRL, which is the replacement for TMDS. I'm not going to go into too much detail about. But we also have link training. Now, on both of those, FRL is handling the equalization. It's actually the transmission of the video data itself. However,
And
part
audio.
of that, and audio, and part of that, the way that it works now, with HDMI 2.0 and everything before that, we had one equalization curve, and that was it. It either worked or it didn't, and which is fine for what it was. But now we have 9 equalizations. Well, okay, so technically we have 8 equalizations curves, and then we have no equalization curve. So there's 9 positions, right?
Per channel.
Per channel. So we have 4 channels. So we have 9 times 4, which is 45. So, or sorry, 36.
I was going to wonder how you got 45 out of 9
I missed the
times
wrong
4.
one. We're at 36 different channel or 36 different configurations for the equalization, or more than that.
It's more than that.
Yeah, it's 4 times.
No.
Nope.
It's 9 times 9 times 9. No. Yeah, it's...
Let's not do math today. So the point is that there's a lot of different equalization possibilities for that. Now, what you create then is the idea that, look, you go back, you hook up a category wire for your speaker wire, and you run 100 watts through that. Is that going to sound the same as a 12 gauge
No.
speaker wire?
No.
Right?
Now I want to say this from empirical data testing.
Yes.
I have done this.
Yes. And I'm not talking 70 volt. I'm not talking 70 volt because
No,
on 70 volt, if
from
you run
purely
it through that,
empirical testing back in the 80s, a friend of mine had a set of Infinity 3Cs.
Yeah.
They look like a coffin. They're about this tall, Watkins woofer configuration, mids and tweets.
Yep.
And we pulled the drivers out of one side and replaced all the internal wiring. And it was 18 to 20 gauge internally off the crossover board. We replaced it all with 12 gauge.
Okay. Good size gauge. Yep.
Yeah, 12 gauge.
Yep.
The difference was immediately. I mean, to somebody with no skill sets at all in audio,
Yeah.
was immediately demonstrable.
Yeah.
Taking the same 12 gauge wire on one side versus 18 on the other, running a Hafler DH500 amp on, at the time, I think it was a Hafler 101 preamp.
Yeah. So
And the differences were demonstrable.
so we're seeing hi-fi come back in a less of a audio side and more into an actual video side, which is kind of funny because you kind of had that before when it came to composite component and S-video and whatever else, because those were analog connections.
Yes.
Versus now where we have digital connections. However, we're running into the same thing because the amount of bandwidth that we have available, or if you have a lower quality cable in between, the system is now configured in a way to where it can utilize the lower quality cable by lowering its abilities on that cable.
Absolutely. Now, and let's touch quickly on cable, because cable is very important for hi-fi.
Yeah.
You know, we used to sell, guys were literally audition cables. You know, put this cable in their hi-fi, put that cable in their hi-fi, just like doing cartridges, because they all have different sounds.
Yeah.
The goal of any cable manufacturer should be
Yep.
to have as little effect as possible on the signal transfer. It's impossible to have zero. Anytime you have a connection, there is a change. But the goal should be as little effect as possible, which has always been our approach. You know, there's the Boston sound, there's the LA sound, there's different sounds, but all those amount to equalizing within the cable.
Right.
Now, you cannot make something sound better than it did at the source through a cable. A cable is not going to improve anything.
Correct. Because
What a
there's no
cable can do is alter it by reducing something in that signal flow.
It can't gain up anything.
Right.
It can only
filter it out.
what's the term?
Gain down or diminish or filter.
No, talking
Tilt.
about
Equalize.
A pot. What's a pot?
Trim.
Nope. Anyways, the point is
So
that
I can,
a cable can only
I can
take
design
away.
a cable. If
Yeah.
you want a cable that sounds a little brighter, no problem. I can design a cable that will reduce mid-range a little bit or bass.
Yeah.
You want a cable that sounds a little bit more punchy? No problem. I can roll off the high frequencies. All this can be done in cable design. This is solid math.
Yeah.
This is not guesswork.
Yeah. Correct. Yeah.
But the goal should be to have as little effect as possible.
That's the word. Attenuate. Thank you,
Ah.
Jeff.
Thank you. But that's all you can do with the cable design.
I love our
Now,
viewers.
By the way, what's Friday's episode?
XLRs.
XLRs.
Yeah, we're going to talk about our Velox XLR cables.
Because
on
what
Friday.
do we try not to do?
Get in the way and change
Attenuate.
anything. Yeah, we try not to attenuate. We want to be as clear as possible, and we want to be. We don't want to be there. We want to just.
And be invisible.
Yeah, exactly. We want to be. Who's the better delivery service right now? Is it UPS or FedEx is the better one? FedEx is the one that just kind of gets it there.
Amazon. Amazon's a better delivery service.
We want to be Amazon. We don't want to be FedEx. We want to take your delivery and deliver it, and as if nothing ever touched it, wasn't even in anything else. FedEx is just kind of chucking it in there, getting it to you. I'm being a little negative.
Yeah, there's a
to
lawsuit coming on that one. There's a lawsuit
it's a good
coming.
thing we don't ship with them anymore. Okay, let's see. Randall is saying, when MP3 first came out, I hooked up a player to a Tektronix audio spectrum analyzer, and I threw up a little bit. Could not believe the truncation and amplitude and bandwidth.
Yeah, and the jitter.
Yeah.
And the noise.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's talk about CDs. When CDs were first introduced, they were introduced as a hi-fi, but we just went off behind us.
Nope.
We're introduced as a hi-fi medium.
Yeah.
Now, most of the real hi-fi guys is like, no. Here's the thing, and here's a good example of the industry and the magazines. Philips Corporation introduced the first CD player. I don't remember the part number, but they shipped it. And two of the major magazines at the time reviewed it, and both of them said it sounded horrible. It sounded dry, it sounded brittle, it was terrible. Now, at the time, a friend of mine, Yendo, was running Meridian. They were afraid if they didn't get a CD player out, they were going to get left behind because they were very much a forward-pushing company. So Philips basically was dumping their chassis because they couldn't sell them because these magazines had told people they were trash. Yendo went and bought up all the chassis, had the front spray painted gray to match Meridian, and had a software change to put a mute for the first hundredth or so of each second and going into a track.
Okay.
And you will have noticed this on our original audio solutions. When you first turn something on, you got a digital.
Yep.
And that's because there was no mute for the clock to lock in. Once the clock locked in, there was no noise.
Yeah.
So all he did was put a pre-clock mute on the signal.
Yeah.
No other changes at all.
Yep.
Put it in a box that said Meridian.
Yep.
And shipped them out. They went to the same reviewers. The same reviewers that trashed Philips said, wow, this is what we're waiting for. The same identical reviewers and reviewed the same identical product. This is what we're waiting for.
So, okay, so here's what we have. We have Leo says he uses UPS, doesn't like Amazon, and then Steve Barrett says ditto. Michael Heiss is saying, once again, sell to what the audience wants, while at the same time educate them to what is better and possible.
We saw, I honest to God, in all the years I sold Bose, I don't think I ever had a pissed off customer.
No, well, because that's
is it hi-fi? No.
Yeah, no.
But it's what they want.
Well, and that's kind of the nature of it. And I think, Michael, you really kind of nailed it on the head. He says, without MP3, the market would not have started for all of this. You have to start somewhere. 100%. Because the thing is that let's be perfectly honest with this. If I didn't have my phone, or at the time it was the iPod or whatever else in my car,
you listen to the radio.
I would listen to the radio. I would listen to FM. And so without this, but the thing is that I'm willing to spend this money, right? I'll be perfectly honest. I'm not willing to spend thousands of dollars on an audio system.
You don't know that yet.
Well, and see, that's just it.
You haven't been exposed.
I haven't been exposed to it.
The problem with hi-fi is an addiction.
Sure. Yeah.
And the first hit of crack is for free, or damn
of course.
near.
Yeah, exactly. Well, here's my point. My point is that I've listened to, we'll stay in the audio, but I've listened to very high quality, sound quality car audio systems. However, I'm not, and those are in the tens, if not 20s of thousands of dollars in these systems. However, I'm not going out and spending. I still have in my Jeep, which Jeep's the wrong vehicle for sound quality stuff anyways, but I'm not going out and spending hundreds of dollars or even 50s of dollars.
Or tens.
Or tens on a new system. I have a new radio in there because my other one died. And I replaced it with whatever I could find for cheap and threw it in there. For me, it wasn't enough of a thing for me to say, okay, I really want to save up and I really want to do this and do it this way. But the thing is that with something like this,
okay, and this is something you brought up because this is cool.
Well, and we talked about this once before. The Mica Origin. We're getting onto our hour at this point. Let's see. Oh, here we go. There you go. So Michael is saying, without MP3, the market would not have started for all this. You have to start somewhere. And for those who don't like Bose, without them, you wouldn't have anything to sell against.
And it's not just it's not just that. They basically created the market for satellite subs.
Yeah.
They helped create the multi-channel, the small.
Yeah, 100%.
They did it.
Yeah.
Whether or not you like, it's the same thing with Noel Lee with Monster.
Sure.
Whether or not you're a Noel Lee fan, without that process, without Monster Cable,
yeah,
the industry would be vastly different.
Yeah. Well, without Sonos, a lot of people wouldn't know distributed audio. There's better distributed audio systems out there with this more centralized thing. And the thing is that that's the gateway device, the gateway drug to get into it. They listen to their Sonos sound bar and they're like, wow, that sounds much better. Now I want to look into, I wonder if it can be even better than that. And they start looking and they find, oh, surround sound. I can get a Denon. I can get a Marantz. I can move up from there. I can get, Sony. I can get into, the better amplifier systems, Macintosh or, whoever else. And it grows from there.
In the days of retail, you generally had multiple rooms set up in a store.
Yeah.
You had a central room, and then you had multiple rooms. And the idea was you always took the customer to the tallest room first to let them hear how good it could be.
Oh, yeah.
This is our reference system, Adam.
Right.
Now, Adam, I realize that as a reference system, it's 50 grand.
Yeah.
Or 20, whatever it was at the time.
Yeah.
And I obviously that's not in your budget, but you know what? This is where you're going.
Yeah.
What can we do to get you there with something within your budget?
Sure. Let's start here, listen to it, see what it is, see what you get your expectations where you want them to be at, and then let's find out where we have to start cutting back.
At that point, it's all about spiffs and margin, but nonetheless.
Of course. Let's see. Leo is saying it's like Sonos, exactly. But God, there is better. Yeah, yes, there is.
And surprisingly, and I think I called you over the weekend on this. I got the new Amazon Echo 4, not the Dot, but the Echo 4.
Yeah,
it's about that big.
Sure.
Like a big grapefruit.
Sure.
Surprise for $99. It was buy one for $99, get one for $79.
Yep.
Make a stereo pair.
Yeah.
It sounds surprising. Is it great hi-fi? No, but you know what? They're going that direction.
Well, but that brings us around to the other side. The value. Where is the value of that? Because as you go up the
you
system
want
that I described, that $250,000 per speaker system that I described before, the thing is that the difference between that system and the system for $10,000,
it's a hell of a lot less than the money.
Exactly, yeah. And so
the point of diminishing returns.
That's the phrase. The point of diminishing returns really starts to become a thing because you spend just a little bit better in certain areas at the beginning. You spend a little bit better at the beginning, and you're going to get a lot better.
Okay, so at the beginning, you're going out shopping for hi-fi.
Sure.
Where do you put the vast majority of your money out of the gate?
Well, an uneducated person such as myself.
I'm asking. Are you going to put it in your receiver or amp? Are you going to put it in your speakers? Are you going to put it in your source?
If I don't go with what we've already talked about, because we've already talked about speakers, and honestly, the correct answer should be speakers.
In my opinion, but you know what? Where do you spend the money out of the gate, guys?
Where do you, for somebody, if you were Well, no, we'll go with educated. With your best educated decision, if you had to, where's your starting point? What are you putting the most money into? Are you putting it into the source, the preamp, the amp, the speakers, the wire? What are you putting it into? Where do you start when you design your hi-fi systems? And does that change based versus how it used to be versus how it is today for hi-fi? Does that change?
Well, certainly the systems, the content now, the quality, bandwidth, and dynamic range available now is far superior to anything we had.
Yeah.
It's tremendous. And kind of back to the first question, turntable versus digital, it honestly comes down to the content.
Yeah.
If it's something that's been wholly recorded in digital, because of the dynamic capabilities and the low noise floor, I want to get everything I can out of it.
Yeah.
And vinyl's not going to do that.
No. But again, what are you listening to it for? Are you listening to it for your honest reproduction or your accurate?
And sometimes it's just for the visceral impact of the music. Not just the close your eyes, break out your glass of whatever it is you want to drink that day and run the kids down the street and get rid of your spouse. Sometimes it's, I want to crank it up.
Sorry, I'm spending too much money. She's already gone.
Okay.
I'm just, let's be honest about that. Okay.
Now, the other side is, honestly, you can pick up a system like this.
Yeah.
With a nice bookshelf speaker and a LAC or God, I hate getting old. You know, a small Paradigm set or the Stark speakers.
Yep.
You know, something, a small bookshelf, and be absolutely amazed.
Yeah.
And all this is, as you said, the gateway drug. It's like, wow.
Yeah.
But what if I...
yeah. Well, and the nice thing about the separates and stuff like this is that you could change out individual parts as you thought to yourself, oh, I wonder if I change this thing out.
A little bit more power.
Yeah, let me put a better amplifier in there. Do I want a little bit better, starting production? Do I,
do I need a phono preamp, or am I just going to use a CD?
Yeah. Okay. We're at an hour.
Well, we got way off topic.
We did, but honestly, this is the nature of hi-fi, right? Well, the pathway that we just took is the nature of hi-fi. You kind of have to consider all of these things when you're designing these systems. Now, everyone out there designing systems for consumers or for your client, you are going, the truth is that you are going to direct your client into, like you were saying before, it's all about the spiffs and whatever's on sale and whatever you have product, availability
in stock.
And whatever's in stock. But even without that, you're going to be directing them in the avenue that you think is the best decision to do that. And honestly, again, when it comes down to audio, it's so subjective that I don't think it's necessarily wrong to do that. Leo and Michael are saying speakers are their decision for the first thing to put the money into, and I would agree with that, because the speakers, honestly, for me, feel like the things that are the most stationary, the things that they're going to be sticking around the longest. You know what I mean?
That's where the rubber meets the road, baby.
Yeah, and so that's the thing that's really going to do a lot of that.
I have a question. For those of you with retail hi-fi sales, when you're doing your qualification process, what questions did you ask your customers?
Sure. Do you have a history of listening to music? Do you have a history of listening to hi-fi? Are you a musician? Have you ever played a musical instrument? Are you wanting to listen to music and cook at the same time or work on the car at the same time? Or are you going to be taking a drink and sitting down and listening to this track? Those are questions, those are legitimate questions that you should be asking
and
the people.
Most of us, all of them. Sunday morning for me used to be Phoebe Snow's Greatest Hits.
Sure.
Start to finish.
Yeah.
When that was done, whatever's next can happen, but that's how I started my day on Sunday.
Let's see. Steve Barrett is saying, what is your favorite speaker to date, Mr. Brent?
I currently own, and really like them, a set of BG 6-foot towers, the 520Is. As far as I know, the last pair out of the factory before they were closed.
Oh, yeah?
However, I will say that the new Stark audio speakers...
I haven't had a chance to I haven't had a chance to listen to anything. What do you have currently?
The BGs.
The BGs?
Okay. Now I'm also running, I've got an A51, an A21. The A21 is for my headphones, my Stax headphones. P5 preamp, Parasound.
Yep.
The D1 transport for my disc. Denon direct drive table. I really want to get a nice belt drive, but the Denon, for when I got it for $320 was a steal.
Yep. Nick Danger is saying we should all just get CED video discs.
Okay, I sold those. That's RCA.
RCA?
RCA. So now a CED video disc was actually read with a needle. Not a laser, a needle.
On
a video disc. So your disc was in a sleeve.
Okay.
You'd put the sleeve in, it would pull the disc out, and then you take the sleeve away.
Okay.
So you never actually touched the disc.
Okay.
It was sold under RCA, and it was another brand, but I don't remember. Magnavox was laser. I don't remember the other brand, but it literally was a needle.
And it would touch the...
It would touch the disc.
But it gave you video.
It gave you video.
Well,
it's digital.
Okay, yeah,
Now,
okay.
at the same time, you had laser vision, which was Pioneer and Magnavox.
Uh-huh.
And the laser vision, boy, were we stupid. But we would take we had the laser vision player, it was top load in the front of the store, and
Yep.
you got the big disc, and it's shiny like a big giant CD.
No.
And
I have seen a laser disc. I have watched a video on laser disc.
We would take them and throw them on the ground and say, they're indestructible. We were idiots, but we didn't,
of course.
this was what marketing told us.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
We also believed that CDs were perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. They could not get better, right?
Right.
Let's see. Michael Heiss is saying, sorry, getting you off topic is my job. We're going to blame you for that. He says, just kidding. Nick Danger is saying the ultimate design balance is between convenience and quality. The user experience is a dance between the two.
By the way, don't laugh about that.
Oh, yeah.
Once we started getting in the late 90s, late 80s, excuse me, when we started seeing remotes for hi-fi.
Yeah.
Generally, my recommendation was based on how comfortable they were with a given remote.
Yeah.
Because some remotes, like NECs, were just horrible. The Lutzmans were terrible.
Yeah.
The Sonys, however,
Pretty basic.
were pretty basic.
Yeah.
They made sense.
Yeah.
And they were color-coded.
Yep. And the volume was on one side, and the channels were on the other side, and you didn't have to worry about it.
But even on the audio,
yeah,
they made sense. Most of the other ones just had a black square with lots of gray rectangular buttons on it, and no real
design to it.
No, the Macs were the worst. The old Macintosh remotes,
Right.
horrible.
Let's see. Michael Heiss is saying, what type of music do you listen to? That is the best answer, or best question.
Now, we're kind of back to what is the purpose.
Yeah.
For example, if I'm going to listen to Take 5, it's going to be vinyl.
Sure.
Yes, the CD does sound better. The remastered CD does sound better, but there's just something not right about it. The fact that it's better doesn't mean it's better.
Well, and I think I would go back to Michael's early statement about what you're used to listening to, because I would say that for certain music tracks that I would be listening to. So, for instance, I listen to a lot of the Gorillaz. The Gorillaz, they are now releasing a lot of their stuff on vinyl, and I've listened to the vinyl recording of it, not on a hi-fi system, but on a similar system to what the CD player was playing on as well.
Okay.
And I preferred the CD version of it because that's what I listened to for most of that. And I think that there's definitely a meaning behind that. And so for that system there, did you originally listen to the vinyl version of that, or did you originally listen to the CD version of that?
Okay, let's be honest. In a lot of cases, I originally listened to, because the albums are so old, I listened to them in the 8-tracks.
Okay, yeah.
In my car.
Yeah.
So, albums tapes that I wore out before I bought them on vinyl or CD. Silk Degrees by Boz Scaggs.
Yeah.
Wore it out on 8-track. And then, the vinyl, and then the cassette, and then the CD.
Yeah.
But different applications. If it's something that, something that's really ultra high fidelity, it's modern recording, it's going to be on a digital format. Because the vinyl just can't do that.
Yeah.
But if it's an older recording, there's something about the warmth, the nature, the welcomeness of the vinyl that to me is superior to the CD, even though the CD will have a lower noise floor.
Sure.
Or slightly better dynamics with remastering. It's not the way, as you said, it's not the way I heard it. It's not the mac and cheese I grew up on.
Yeah, exactly. Michael's also saying JVC had a difference, but similar product, talking about the CED system.
I don't remember that one. Now, they did VCD in the mid-'80s.
Right.
When you got a CD that actually had little bits of 480i video on it.
Okay.
Who was the hot jazz musician of the 80s, middle 80s? There's a couple of discs, but in a lot of cases, what you really got was just some album art and words.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was called VCD.
Mm-hmm. Michael's also saying, and at the time, LV looked and sounded better than anything else that was out there at the time.
Yes, it did.
LV.
Laser video.
Laser video. Okay, yes. Yeah. Well, yeah. So when I watched a laser video, it was already after DVD was a thing, and after it had already come out and was broadly accepted. It was in high school, and we had it was a down day. The teacher was out sick or whatever, and so the substitute was in, and for some reason in this wing of the school, they had a laser disc player for their AV cart.
Mm-hmm.
And so we watched some documentary on physical science on a laser disc. And it was really neat because none of the other kids in the class had seen anything like this before. And in doing my research and stuff, I had already seen of it, but I'd never witnessed it in person. And it was a large
It's
platter.
an album-sized disc.
Yeah, and looking at that and comparing it to a CD or a DVD player and looking at that, it's like, that's a completely different system for sure. And it was really quite interesting to watch because it looked very good. It wasn't.
When I first went to work for the owner of Metra,
Sure.
working on his house, he had a Mac system with a Mac laser player,
Yep.
which was simply a rebadged Pioneer.
Okay.
And had a specialist come in to tweak the Vidicron projector. Vidicron Pininfarina, beautiful projector. So the guy's in there, he's looking at the laser disc, and DVDs had just basically, they were out, but not for very long.
Sure.
And we were talking about it, he said, oh man, DVDs, they're not going to last. Laserdisc is going to be the winner. Laserdisc was never a winner. Trying to find a rental.
For a while.
Yeah, trying to find a place to rent disc was hell. But the first time I saw Apocalypse Now on laser video versus tape, when that tiger jumped out of the bushes, holy crap.
Yeah.
And Top Gun.
Oh,
Top
yeah.
Gun on laser was our go-to because Top Gun on VHS, if you try to play it in surround, the voice bounced around because in the original encoding to tape, they only did one channel in surround. The other channel was still in original data.
Okay.
So it did weird things to the voice.
Huh. Interesting. Let's see. Not you, Adam. Correct. That is a key customer question. Call me Mike. Call me Michael. Just don't call me late for dinner. That's Michael.
Put a
Heiss.
lump 'em.
Yep. Okay. So, guys, I think this is our longest episode ever.
Thank you
we
for
are
joining
now
us.
up to it's 4:13
4 hours
now.
and 27
4
minutes?
hours. Yeah, right. No, sorry, we're up to an hour and 13 minutes. Thank you all so much for coming and watching the video
And
with us
tell
today.
us what is hi-fi.
Yeah, let us know down in the comments what you consider hi-fi. I know many of you have already left it over in the chat section. Leave it down in the comment. We like to kind of collect those and see what's going
I
on.
have
with
another.
it.
Who actually worked in a hi-fi store?
Ooh, good question.
Who worked in a
Yeah.
hi-fi store? What did you sell, and what was your go-to?
And in leading up to next week's episode, we are going to be talking about hi-fi's position today. So we'll be talking more about the stuff that's actually out there today and where we see it going in the future and sources and whatnot. So what I'm looking from you for next week's episode is, what do you consider as a good hi-fi system today? What you see the hi-fi system, where you see it going? What would you buy today? Let me know that down in the comment section, and we'll talk about it next week as well.
Don't forget, Friday, we're talking about XLRs.
Michael Heiss is asking, don't forget about doing demos with the THX WOW disc.
Oh, yeah.
Did too many demos with that, is what he's saying. Steve Barrett, thank you.
There was a couple. You had the DTS, which had the bouncing balls.
Yep.
And then the THX WOW, which kind of had this.
Okay.
And then there was the Telarc Stampede disc.
Ah.
It was a CD Telarc made that had, you're sitting around a campfire and you hear
Sure.
the fire, crackling,
and
and then
bugs
these
and whatever.
cows just run past you. It was awesome.
Leo is saying, let's see, Steve Barrett saying, loved it. We of course, Steve Barrett, we always love having you all here in the chat. Thank you for watching the video.
And Michael.
And everyone else who's doing it. Leo is saying he would buy Symphony Hi-Fi.
I can't afford Symphony Hi-Fi.
That is a shameless plug, but that's okay. Everybody, again, thank you so much for watching. We really appreciate you.
Everybody, what's your turntable of choice that's available today?
Yeah, let us know what your thing is for that.
If I were buying old, it'd be a Tandberg 164.
Sure. Tandberg 164?
Tandberg 164.
Okay. So, with that, everybody, thank you
excuse me, Thorns 164. I got my T's backwards. Thorns.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a beautiful table.
That works. So, anyways, I think that'll do it for us for today, right?
Guys, have a great one. Thank you for joining us. Don't forget on Friday, it's XLR Day.
Yep.
And next week is Analog Audio again. Where are we at today?
Yep, exactly.
I'm Brent.
I'm Adam.
Don't cut your wires too short.
Reboot early.
Reboot often.
Turn off CEC.
Call tech support. And
test your equipment before you walk away.
exactly. Have a good one.